Now, many of the intellectuals, they feel that era, the century or the epoch of movement is over. The main reason for that is with they are growing of these corporate houses, corporate sector. When after they started ruling and controlling the state, the concept of state is withering away. It is diluting. This is what worries people like me. There is no state now. It is only corporate sector which is controlling the state. State is a concept which is already destroyed. There is no state. It is only corporates. So there, how can the movements flourish? If there is a government, if there is a state, yes, we can fight. But there is no state.
The problem is the corporation and the state have become entangled.
Yes, entangled with it.
They're entangled with one another.
They have hijacked it. They have hijacked.
So basically, this is interesting because you must remember when Prime Minister Modi came to the United States on one of his visits, before he met President Obama, who has these issues that I described, problems with him. He first went to Facebook.
Well, Facebook.
Yeah, he went to Facebook. He met Mark Zuckerberg, CEO, founder of Facebook, based on some reports I read, before he met Obama. So what does that mean? That means it's a new nation state.
Yes,
It's a new state.
More important than Obama.
And let me explain to you, even the Obama administration, there was a revolving door with executives from Google working for the Obama administration. Chief technology officer for Obama was a Google executive. Eric Schmidt, who's the former CEO of Google and was chairman of the board, I believe chairman of the board of the holding company, he's an advisor to Obama and Hillary Clinton. This is an open door between these companies and the state. So the state can't be understood in these simple ways. The sort of traditional model of the state is threatened now.
Threatened, yes, it is threatened and almost diluted.
Right.
So how shall we proceed?
Exactly.
In a situation like this, the progressive minds are the people who advocate human values, who believe in human spirit. How shall we proceed?
So we've reached a point increasingly where we see the connections between the corporate sector and the nation state, right?
Yeah.
And this is a big issue because in the United States itself, the corporations literally can buy the members of Congress.
Correct.
I mean, they don't own them, but they own their choices, their voting records, right? Because there's no laws blocking corporations from funding the state in whatever ways, the campaigns, the political campaigns. And so we see how that has affected in a big way the United States, and I'm sure this has had a huge effect in India as well. So basically this means if you are some kind of big corporate wealthy billionaire, you can put money both into Obama and you can put it into Trump.
Yes.
So you are winning no matter what. And that's even more true for the military contractors in the country, which people don't even talk about because they're scared to talk about. So there is a huge set of issues that need to be fought against to truly be democratic. To truly be democratic, people have to have power, not these big money corporations. Businesses are okay, but businesses that have grown so large to the extent where they're engineering political campaigns and actually changing the way people experience the campaign through these platforms like Google results or Facebook results, they have social responsibility. So the issue for me is that, again, the absence of ethical social responsibility in these kind of corporate platforms. So what we need to do, and this has been successful in history, is movements. Movements start locally, but they actually grow, and they had a huge effect, right? So Occupy was seen as a movement that it started in New York City, just in a park, in Wall Street. And then it started to recombine itself, and it was in all these other parts of the world. And basically, out of the Occupy movement, Bernie Sanders emerged, who's the major leader of the progressive left in the United States. He's not perfect, but he's very, very different than this existing system. Trust me when I say that. He's an old 74-year-old guy. He doesn't care. He calls himself a democratic socialist. And he's now the most popular candidate in the United States. The bigger systems figured out ways to kind of block his election in the last round. But people are fed up. So actually, to your question, even though we're at a moment right now where a lot of people feel like, oh, it used to be better, now it's worse, sometimes things get so bad that you create new possibilities, new flourishing, right? And in India, I believe this is also possible, though I'm not necessarily an expert on India like yourself. But I do feel that if people in India start thinking past these sort of ideas they have, like IT industry is just neutral, or development is good. But whose development? Whose development?
Correct.
What do we mean by development? What are the agendas at stake? Who profits from development? Whose voices are involved in development? So these issues are global. They're global. And they have different kinds of specificities in these different countries and regions.
See, the main problem with any movement, especially in India, is no true progressive thinkers agree on any one issue.
It's a problem.
They're thinkers.
Yeah.
So they cannot be easily convinced. But whereas these rightists, no, they don't question at all. They go as a single flux, huge mass. But here, no three persons, three intellectuals agree on any issue. And they forget that in the common interest of the larger section of the people, they have to bury their differences. It is happening, it is not happening at all in our country. That is the issue which really bothers people like me.
Yeah. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem in the United States also. It's a huge problem even amongst the intellectuals on the left. And it's funny because those intellectuals produce such great work. They should basically calm down a little bit and work with people.
How to educate them?
Work with
How
organizers.
to educate intellectuals? That is the major issue here.
I mean, that's
See,
why-
they become one voice. The ignorant mass, the rightists, they become one voice. But here, multiple voices, and usually it is a lone voice. And more than the rightists criticizing them, the other intellectual will criticize this intellectual, and they will be out of circulation.
I've noticed that.
How to address it?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. Basically, this book was not written because I'm an intellectual. This book was written based on my own experience as someone who travels and cares about people, an activist. It's a book about that. So I think of my work as about ethics and justice and equality first before intellectual. So we need more graduate students, professors, but to be directly working with community organizers. So for example, in the United States, we have a big movement now called Black Lives Matter because so many, as you know, so many black men and women have been shot and killed by the police. So there's a huge movement on. But I brought some of the Black Lives Matter organizers to my campus. You know, they hadn't come there very often. And there was so much that could be mutually gained from that interaction because my students know so much about technology and surveillance and helping them, develop their strategies from that level, helping them find resources. And these guys know the street. They're from the street.
Yes.
And these are the new fusions.
Correct.
These are the new fusions. And otherwise, to be completely honest, our work as academics is not that meaningful. It's
Not that meaningful
important.
because you are cut off from the streets.
Just like Facebook bubble,
Yes,
there's
yes.
academic bubble. Just like academic bubble, there's commercial bubble that we talked about, IT bubble. We got to break past bubbles. That's what it takes. And the reason why the right wing can come together very easily is basically their interests are extremely simple.
Simple as they're
Make
not
as
complicated.
much money.
They're not complicated.
Disenfranchise as many people as possible and hold power and wealth.
Correct.
I mean, that's pretty easy, right? I don't care how I get it, hook or crook. I want power and wealth. So that's
Correct.
that's not the most intellectually complex philosophy.
Now, these progressive leaders have to search themselves and come to an agreement with others.
Yeah.
Minimum working environment they have to create. And before forgetting, I want to ask you one thing. There's a huge following for Noam Chomsky in our country.
Wow.
He has impressed us a lot, educated us a lot.
Sure.
Please, can you tell something about your interaction with Chomsky?
Professor Chomsky was a professor at MIT when I went there to graduate school. He was still teaching there at that time. Now he's actually emeritus. He's retired from MIT. But I remember as a graduate student, right when 9/11 happened, September 11th, 2001. I don't think many people will forget that day. That was the beginning of a huge new world
Correct.
order.
New world
right?
order. Yes, yes.
Global wars came as a reaction to the terrorist attack coming out of the United States. We started to create all sorts of, wars everywhere that we now still are in. Still in Iraq, still in Afghanistan. Now we have Libya. We have weird
And North Korea may start.
all sorts of stuff. So the point I'm just trying to make is Chomsky at that time, while I was a graduate student, was giving, it was so wonderful for us, not just students, but the public. He's about the public. He's not just about academia. We all came together and he was giving talks explaining what he saw going on. He was educating us at that time. So here's a man who's deeply, deeply generous he's one of the most brilliant scholars in the world. He's the most famous person in linguistics. The most famous. In the history of linguistics. Nobel Prize caliber scholar who dedicates most of his work, not to that, but to actually trying to create and shape a more humane world. So, since I was writing this book, I thought perhaps Professor Chomsky would be interested in the book. He's one of these people, he's the only person I know like this. He's the most famous intellectual in the world, I think. And he emails back everybody. So it's not because I'm anything special.
Oh.
He wrote me back just like he would write any common man. Anybody. You can email him. I can email him. Any of us can email him. And he'll email back. So he emailed me back incredibly polite, gracious. He said he was really interested in the book. He said he doesn't know if he has time to be on the cover of the book or to, these things. But he's very honest and straightforward. So he said, thank you for sending me the book. Here's my address. And he's hopefully going to come to my book event that I'm doing at the bookstore, at Harvard Bookstore in September. I'm doing book events with different activists, different intellectuals, different organizers, all different people, artists also, filmmakers, musicians, people who have something to say about a more humane world. And in Chicago, I'm doing an event with Bill Ayers, who's the co-founder of the Weathermen. And he's a professor, though. So scholarly level, we can have a connection. But of course, that guy, more than me and almost anybody, was about people and community activism. And he's very infamous, of course, now as well.
My last question to you is, are you optimistic about, at some point, a proper world order will emerge based on ethics and social justice and human spirit? We will utilize even technological advances for that end. Are you optimistic?
For some reason, I feel optimistic.
Good. It gives people like me hope.
No, and knowing about how successful you are gives me hope, right? These are the bridges that we have to build. And yes, I am. I am because I know that things have gone really bad. They've gone really wrong on lots of levels, right? Like the inequality of how people can access food. The inequality where these new technologies are creating waste landfills and are polluting the water in Africa, for example. So people don't fully realize this is happening, but I do believe that these engineers will start to think about these things if people like me and people like you explain to them, not because we think that they are bad, but because they're not realizing.
They're not realizing it. Yes.
See, engineering and IT is like this. I'm a former engineer. Basically, you're in a process where the achievement is the technology. The process is the technology. It's not what the technology represents, who it serves, who it makes money for. All those questions are not part traditionally of engineering education. Even in US and definitely at IIT here, I've seen that also. So we have to now bring people together. We have to bring people together. So I feel 65% of people in the United States are not happy with
Trump.
So the question is can we come together? We have an opportunity to come together. If we don't come together around the right values, then it's basically
more
like the head of the snake will be cut off again.
Correct.
That we need a new formation, a new formation where we actually say, hey, I might be different than you on this issue, but overall
we can work together regarding, yes, you are right.
And we have to realize that they intersect, these ideas. Like women's rights is connected to economic rights. Environmental rights is connected to women's rights. And of course, Economic class is connected to environmental issues. They're all intersecting issues, right? So people have to stop thinking of themselves as defined by one thing and see the collective, the human.
Correct.
So I feel like it's time for that. I feel optimistic. I think I feel optimistic because I meet enough people like
Correct.
yourself who are actually
We
successful.
meet each other and yes.
And I remember I worked in Egypt. I know the military took over that revolution, but I'm telling you, the people I met in Egypt are the most inspiring people I've ever met, and they're highly intelligent. They're not just fighting.
Beautiful.
They're thinking about strategy.
The orientation is strong.
And they're artists,
Proper.
and they're labor people. It's a whole range of people. And these people together can come and change the world.
So on that note, we can part. And thank you for your time, Mr. Ramesh.
No, my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
ಜರ್ನಿ ಆರಂಭ ಆಗಿದೆ. ನೀವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ನನ್ನ ಜೊತೆ ಪಯಣಿಸಬಹುದು. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಒಟ್ಟಾಗಿ ಪಯಣಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ಒಂದು ಮಾನವೀಯ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಯನ್ನು, ಅರ್ಥಪೂರ್ಣ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಯನ್ನು ತರಬಹುದು. ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ಕಾಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಲೈಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ.